This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
Mothers know all about life's tricky transitions. Thankfully, Ollie helps you prioritize wellness through every age, life stage, or magnificent mood change. Need a multitasking multivitamin that keeps up with you? How about an essential prenatal for you and baby? Ollie's got you through it all. Life's tricky. Your wellness routine shouldn't be. Get what you need at ollie.com.
Yeah. Great presentations. Let me share my screen here. Yeah, so I'm Chris. I'm a physician based out of Houston, Texas, and I'm the founder and CEO of Financial Freedom for Physicians. And I'll talk a little bit about the overarching mission and overall arching goals. What I'll do is I will give an overview. I'll talk a little bit about myself, and I'm going to focus on, I'm a global macro guy, so I like to talk about trends, and I'll talk about the current landscape, and then I'll talk about two businesses, six-figure businesses that I created since 2002 that helped me to get financially independent, financially free, and retire early when I was 38 back in 2016. And then we'll talk about two of my current ventures, which is Financial Freedom for Physicians, and then also this whole crypto, DeFi, Web3 metaverse, and we'll talk about future directions. Like I said, I'm Chris, and I'm happy to be here. I was supposed to actually be there in person, but inclement weather, hopefully next time. But I'm going to talk a little bit. So if you go to the next slide, overview, I'm going to talk a little bit. So disclaimer, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to promote any services. I'm here for the value exchange and just here for the interaction and the information. And then I'll talk a little bit about myself. I have a very unique, interesting, inspiring, really out of the box type story. But one thing that really resonated with me during this time was like a lot of physicians were talking about our dreams. And really, I think all of us were looking for more influence and really way to help others and in the midst of a really dysfunctional and broken healthcare system. So that's forced us to look at other means, alternatives of achieving significance, financial freedom, and making an impact. I created two six-figure companies. One was based on options trading and equity investing, and this was by the age of 29. And then I further started investing in real estate. So I created that into a six-figure business as well. And I was able to retire early in 38 and at the age of 38 in 2016. And we'll talk a little bit about my two current ventures, which is the Financial Freedom for Physicians, and then the use of future applications of crypto and why I think it's really the future and a lot of transformation is happening. So a little bit about myself, my story. Most of us here, I grew up on the cusp of Gen X and millennials. The predominant way of thinking about financial freedom back in the 80s and 70s was you climbed the corporate ladder, you became a doctor, lawyer, engineer, worked on Wall Street, etc. And for me, my motivation was freedom. So really freedom to choice, outcome, you could do whatever you want. So a lot of that dealt with finances. But nonetheless, I focused on getting into medical school. I went to Baylor. I was part of the MD PhD program. But what was interesting was that I saw two dichotomies. So when I went to do my PhD in bioengineering, I saw the entrepreneurial side. So a lot of scientists, a lot of students were starting companies. They were in their early teens and they were becoming millionaires. I saw a lot of scientific discoveries get commercialized. So that really exposed me to two different types of thinking. So one was the traditional way of thinking, and another one was an entrepreneurial way of thinking. So I started getting curious. I started networking. I started immersing myself with people that were on the fringe. And so I started investing in stocks and trading options, and that allowed me to get financially independent at 29 years old. So I'll talk a little bit about options. After that, I went into real estate. Back then it was the real estate boom. It was really easy to get financing. Real estate in the Houston area was really cheap, so you could get a 2-bed, 2-bath condo for $70,000. So with my options trading, with the ease of lending, I was able to invest in 2 properties by the time I was 29 years old. And this was from the period of 2000 to 2007. So I had this dichotomy here. I had this 6-figure business. I was doing well. I didn't really need a job, but I really enjoyed learning. I loved the academic environment. I loved being around smart people, but I hated the corporate world. I went to my deans and they all told me, just tough it out, get a high paying job, get board certified. And after that, you can do whatever you want. So I took that conventional route. I went into orthopedic surgery. And like one of the speakers yesterday said, that was one of the worst decisions I had ever made in my entire life. It was really against all my values, and I was more an entrepreneur. And what was interesting was that I toughed it out for 2 years, and it really framed my thinking about institutions, hierarchy, bureaucracy, and just systems of very deeply entrenched systems. It really framed my thinking and how I view centralized authorities and governments. And I was extremely miserable. I hated my career. And this was the time of September of 2008. So when I saw a lot of CEOs and really a lot of corporate greed and corruption, they basically stole from the entire world. So I did not want to be a part of this. So I took a leap of faith and I turned in my keys, badge, and pager, and I was going to make it out on my own. Long story short, 2008 to 2022, I was an entrepreneur. I started investing in single-family real estate from 2008 to 2016, just buying a piece every year. And you'll hear about the different strategies that I use. But essentially, after 8 years, I was able to become a multimillionaire, and I was able to retire early. And additionally, what I did was in 2016, when I retired, I took a year off, but that really got boring, just traveling the world, and there's only so much leisure you can do. So I wanted to, my ultimate outcome and my ultimate impact is to help other physicians and to really create a legacy and to create a brand that outlasts me when I'm gone. So I started Financial Freedom for Physicians. I started studying digital entrepreneurs. I think the digital realm is extremely the most place where there's the most opportunity and the most leverage. And I started learning about social media, digital products, digital courses. I've written 4 books and I've spoken on a number of high profile summits. On top of that, I've always been a trendsetter. So I started studying about digital assets, digital currencies, what makes them valuable, why are they such a hype? And I started investing in Bitcoin in 2012. And to give you an example, in 2012, I invested $10,000 in crypto, and it's been one of the best performing assets in my portfolio over the last 10 years compared to my investment since 2000. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. I want to hone down some of the key mindsets that have really helped me to stand apart and really set myself apart from the mainstream. So I mentioned earlier on that's all about freedom, and really, if you think about freedom, during 2016, I boiled it down to 4 types of freedom. So first is financial freedom. So that's basically, if you have your financial freedom, that's the basis and the groundwork for you to do other things. So you can focus on your emotional freedom. You can focus on your health, your wealth, your relationships. You can focus on spending your time where you want to spend it. And then you can go anywhere you want. To give you an example, last year, I spent the first 3 months in the mountains of Colorado, skiing, writing, blogging, speaking, etc. And because the weather in Texas is so hot during the summer, my wife and I, we move up to the Northwest through Airbnb. And in our spare time, we travel the mountains, we hike, we do a lot of fishing, camping, etc. So if you have freedom, you can do a lot of things. And really, it's not about status, power, money. It's about making an impact and really creating a legacy so others can enjoy the same thing. So like I said, the mission is to empower early career physicians to really focus on their finances so that if they get their finances right, they can practice medicine. They're not tied down to their jobs, etc. The other thing that's really helped me is studying history, economics, and cycles. History always repeats itself, and I've always been a trend spotter. So I was able to spot the gold back in 2009. I was able to spot crypto in 2012. I was able to spot real estate. The only things I missed out were on the internet when I was in high school, and also on investing in China. Because of those two huge losses, I've always honed my ability to spot trends and where the future is going, and being always on the cutting edge and surrounding myself with individuals such as yourself and sharing ideas. Two of the concepts that we really talked about yesterday were leverage and asymmetry. So I'm always looking for making the greatest impact with the least amount of effort in the most efficient way possible. So I'm always looking for how can I achieve more with less. And so that's, if in terms of finances, you can see it with options, equities, real estate, and then lastly, crypto. And I've always been curious at seeing dichotomy. So why do some people who follow the mainstream, continue to believe the same things and they consistently struggle, while those who are doing new things, such as ourselves, are always on the cutting edge and doing better? So that's always fascinated me, and I've always seeked out people doing very innovative things. So I always look for guests on my podcast. If you guys are interested in getting on my podcast, I'm always talking to people that are doing things on the fringe. One of my aha moments came in 2001, which was the 9/11. And what I saw was that, one, we were in an increasing globalized economy, and two, that our world is no longer safe, both financially, economically, politically, etc. Companies can get destroyed in a matter of days. And what that showed me was, this was back in 2001, a lot of my friends after 9/11, they were working for the big banks on Wall Street or Silicon Valley in Austin, and they got let go. So this really opened my eyes to the idea that job stability and job security are no longer in vogue. And if it can happen to Wall Street, if it can happen to Silicon Valley, it's going to happen to medicine. So I started to see this happen in the auto industry and also in the airline industry. So I knew eventually this would happen to the medical profession. So I started immersing myself. Two of the number one books that I read were Multiple Streams of Income, which was talking about diversifying your income streams. And what really stood out to me yesterday was Mike was talking about, as opposed to getting a larger salary, that you're depending on one salary, or a larger cut of a single source of income, get smaller cuts of multiple sources. So that way you can diversify your stream. So that was an aha moment for me. The next aha moment was the book I read was Getting Started in Options. So this really, prior to that, I always thought that you could only make money by buying mutual funds or when the market went up. So this really showed me that you can make money in a up market, down market, and sideways market. And the reason why options are so powerful is that, one is that it's extremely asymmetric. So you can, for example, a call option, a put option, the price of one contract to secure control of 100 shares of an underlying security is much cheaper than buying those underlying security outright. So that was one, is asymmetric. The second thing was the idea of control versus ownership. So as opposed to owning equity of the stock, you actually just control the underlying shares. So you're basically, your maximum profit or loss came from the price movement. So that was very fascinating to me. And then the third was leverage. And the fourth was just directionality. And this portion of my portfolio has has a long-term and a short-term strategy. So long-term, buy and hold, blue chip stocks, the major indices, dollar cost average. I haven't changed that investment strategy since 2000. And Jim Daly advocates for saving 20% of your income. I've always tried to increase that to 50, 80% of my income by either increasing my earning potential, increasing earned income, or increasing my passive sources of income, so that if you increase your passive sources of income, you can apportion all of your earned income into these different investments. So that's a long-term buy and hold strategy. I haven't sold anything. If I do, it's just for necessary purchases and things like that. The second way to generate cash flow through options and stocks is short-term. So those are basically opportunistic trading opportunities. So these are very speculative, and so you have to know what you're doing. You have to have a lot of accurate information. So these can be with market corrections, bear markets. That's like you saw in 2008 and 2020. And you can also hedge with options. So that's basically if you think the market is going down, for example, last couple of days, we've seen a huge downturn in the market, that you can use options. And the other thing is, for example, since we're going into such uncertain times, the prices of, for example, gold, oil, commodities, silver, all of the things are going up. In an inflationary market, you can always use stocks and options as hedges against these types of hyperinflation, deflation, etc. So that's a little bit about the stocks and options portion. The second portion is through real estate. The reason why I got into stocks and options was, one, is very easy. You didn't need to have 100,000. You didn't need to have 50,000. You could dollar cost average, get exposure to price, and profit from momentum. But the thing is, I was studying a lot of wealthy people, and the majority of people made their fortunes in real estate or stocks or finance. That real estate really fascinated me. And the reason why it fascinated me was because it was a store of wealth. It's really hard to buy, and it's very illiquid unless you're flipping. I don't do flipping, but it's very illiquid. It's a great way of storing your wealth. It's a great way of creating generational wealth. So you can pass it down to your kids, your heirs. You can give it to charity. And the thing that really fascinated me was the tax advantages. It's a hedge against inflation, but at the same time, you can remodel your investment property and get a tax deduction, tax breaks, etc. So that was really key to me, because high net worth individuals, high income individuals, the majority of your earnings are eaten up by taxes. So taxes are your greatest expense. Your tax liability is extremely high. So real estate really appealed to me. So I started studying that. And what I found was that is investing in real estate, you're not creating a product or service, but you're investing in a process. So the product or service is already there. You just have to learn how to spot value, how to gain access and control to the underlying property, how to market it, and how to generate cash flow. Like I mentioned, I currently have 10 single family residences throughout the Houston area, rent out to medical professionals, long-term, short-term basis. I also used house hacking to generate additional savings and additional profits. The long-term strategy is buy, rent, rehab, refinance, repeat. And I also have a number of short-term rentals on the Airbnb platform. So these are all throughout Houston Medical Center. I also have one in New Jersey as well. And that's been throwing off six figures since the time of approximately 2008, 2009. Bought my last property in 2018. And what's interesting is I sense that the real estate market is changing. There's a lot of private equity. There's a lot of syndications happening. And whether the market's going to correct or not, we don't really know. Right now, things are really uncertain. So I was at this turning point, became a millionaire through real estate. Should I continue on this path, or should I invest in syndications, bigger deals, etc.? And what was interesting was that I've always been an entrepreneur. And like I said, I've always looked for the greatest leverage. The greatest leverage for me was in creating a brand and going through the digital realm, the internet, social media, e-commerce, etc. So what I did was during that year off, I learned from the best, learned about social media. And what I really learned was creating a brand and influence is what I really wanted to do to create a significant impact. I created Financial Freedom for Physicians. The mission is for financial literacy. I've written four books, which you'll see later. And I'll tell you this story, especially for inspiration, because it was not always like this. It wasn't really easy. When I came out in 2016, I just had this idea. I want to help physicians for freedom. And that was basically it. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And that led me to studying the 4 types of freedom. I created my first book. And what was interesting was that my first speaking gig was through in Seek in 2018, and that sort of put me on the map. And the way I got that speaking gig was by going to these events, networking, talking with the conference organizers, and really getting my name out there. And so that resulted in allowing me to speak there. So from there, my brand grew. What's funny was I was researching all of these big name podcasters, and Mike's name came up, and I pitched my idea to him, and I was like, I'm just gonna throw it out there. It was actually a long shot, but then he emailed me. He said, well, I bought your book. I really liked it, and I want you on the show. And so that launched my brand furthermore. And then and it wasn't, like I said, you never know what you're going to do. So just pitch. You have to continually network. You have to contact, communicate, and you have to pitch your name and service. And you never know who's going to say yes or no. So I did the same thing with Peter Kim. This was back right as the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And I want to say that despite all of the uncertainty, all of the turmoil, COVID-19 really accelerated my brand because it put me on the map, because I had this interesting, unique story. I had done all this work, had all this knowledge and experience, but people didn't really know about me. The Peter Kim's brand, Mike Wumings, John Jerica, Maisha Claiborne, all of these people, this was back when everybody was stuck at home. So I was doing these summits, webinars, group coaching. Prior to that, I was doing individualized coaching, but I found that group coaching online is extremely much more scalable because all you need is an internet connection. And it makes no difference if you spend 1 hour with 10 clients versus 20 clients versus one client. So it's extremely scalable. So I'm always looking for these economies of scale. From there, it's grown to speaking at the White Coat Investor. Last year, I spoke at one of the highest profile financial conferences, especially when social media and money meet, which is known as FinCon. Again, I threw my pitch out there. They liked it. And so I was there. Like I said, you never know what you're going to get. So always just keep pitching. I've continued to write for Kevin MD. You'll see some of the articles later. And one of my recent Kevin MD articles, which I can't really share until it's been published, but it's a synthesis of all of what's going on in the space. So you can see some of my books here. So you can check them out on Amazon. You don't really have to, you don't have to buy them. These are some of the books that really helped promote my brand. So any of you content creators, people that are interested in promoting their brand, you must write a book, establishes you as an authority. So when you say people, I've written a book, it's not really for the money, it's for the branding purposes. So definitely write a book. If you're interested in who edited my book, I can refer her to you. It was very inexpensive. And again, these books, they're passive income. I continue to use the income to reinvest in the business or donate to charity. Let's see here. I started writing a lot during the pandemic about job security, how these organizations, these insurance companies, these lawyers, these lobbying entities are really using physicians, and they're really failing physicians. I talked about a lot about this. I talked about on MedPage Today, talking about the end of job security in healthcare and several dangerous trends. So one is an increasing trend towards you must work for the hospital and you must work for the hospital system. So this is really dangerous because you lose complete control. So they can control everything from your license, your credentialing, your salary, your time, etc. And it talks a lot about these trends that we have to look at. So you can check it out on MedPage Today. You can also see it on Kevin MD, where I talk about how COVID-19 basically forced physicians, it's basically ripping the Band-Aid off to rethink the concept of job security. So as physicians, we do enjoy a very wide brand and influence, but it's not the same as it was compared to the 80s and 90s. So it talks a lot about that. It got a lot of engagement, 2,000 shares. So I'll talk a little bit about the roses of the brand. So I grew it from no followers all the way to 16,000 followers in the span of 6 years. It's really grown on TikTok, Instagram. We're on Facebook. We have a business private Facebook group. We're also on YouTube, Twitter, and I have a podcast as well and a blog. It's grown from a small business to a 6-figure business with revenues mainly coming from coaching, consulting, and then finally speaking, affiliates, and partner sponsorships. So one of the challenges with this building a brand is, so we talked a lot about, I feel that the brand is probably in the toddler or teenage stage, and it has to have more resources. So I used to outsource a lot of things, such as the website design, such as the editing. So it would be outsourced for very specific cases, and I would do the rest. So a lot of it's control issues, but it's grown to be to the point where I need to outsource it to either part-time or full-time staff. Main skill is in the vision, in the strategy, in the execution. That's my skills. But I've learned every aspect of the business, all the way from scheduling to editing content to managing social media. I've looked at some of the resources that were mentioned yesterday, looking at a personal assistant, social media manager, and content editor. I'm not the best content editor, so if I can get people that are really skilled in creating high quality content, that would be really great. And that would free up a huge amount of my time so I can focus on the long-term vision. And the long-term vision is to scale it to a multi six-figure business. I want to, some of the things that are in my mind are, do I want to launch a huge course, summits? I know that's been a lot of things, is in-person virtual summits. And now we have these metaverse summits. So these are things on my mind for the future. I also want to change the income structure so that it's less earned income and more passive income. So that's through affiliates, partnerships, sponsorships. And lastly, I want to change it from where I'm dealing with individual clients to individual businesses. That may take a little bit of business coaching. We can talk a little bit about some of the ways to overcome the challenges or some of the potential opportunities. The next opportunity that I want to talk about is where I call this I call it the greatest wealth transfer that is happening right before our eyes. The reason why I say this is because we are seeing a period of the highest inflation, highest government debt, highest amount of taxes. So if you think about, we're on the hook for 2008, we're also on the hook for 2020. We're also looking at retiring baby boomers, and people are having less kids. We're seeing a lot of inequality and social unrest, energy, war crisis, all of these risks. All of this is what's happening, is that we are coming upon a time when old ideas and paradigms are colliding with the new paradigms, which is why we see all of this unrest. But one of the books that I will talk about, which is called The Fourth Turning, is during these periods of great unrest are where the greatest opportunities come. So if you think about inflation, so if you have a business, Mike was talking about the greatest ROI can be found in a business. You can also profit through inflation through owning real estate, hedging with gold. So there's a lot of different ways. Through debt, if you want to minimize your debt and tax liabilities, you start a business because that gives you a lot of tax deductions. In terms of all of these other opportunities, what I'm moving into is known as the digital asset space. So I talk about digital asset space, crypto as one whole thing, because if you think about it, back in the early days, you had stocks and you had real estate, you had bonds. But then as people were looking for more alpha, for more hedge, for more opportunities for income, they started to look for other things such as venture capital, angel investing, hedge funds, accredited investing. So this emerging asset class is something that I'm highly interested in because I think it is highly transformative, not in terms of capital opportunities, but also in terms of a new financial system, a new money, a new way of representing value, digital scarcity, etc. Two of the most recent books that have had a huge influence on me are, first is Ray Dalio. So he talked about this, the most recent book came out a couple months ago called The Changing World Order. And this is what I talk about, this precipice. So one is we're seeing massive stimulus printing, massive government debt, huge inequality, and we have rising countries such as China, India, and now we saw with Russia. And this hasn't been seen in over 100 years. And it talks about how you can position yourself so that you not only protect yourself from the downside, but you can actually position yourself to potentially gain from the upside. The other book I talk about is this book it's called The Fourth Turning. And it's basically talking about these 80-year cycles defined by 4 different periods. So usually these 4 different periods are based on different generations. So you have high period, awakening period, unraveling, and crisis. So 2020 is the end of the last cycle, and we're coming into this new cycle. So anytime you have these sort of disruption, it's the best time for creatives, entrepreneurs, artists, people that are here to shape the next turning in the next generation. So those are really key books, and they really will frame your mind and how you see the world going forward. So we'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin, what it is. I know among the physician community, it's labeled as a scam, Ponzi scheme. Most recently, I saw on social media it's saying it's going to zero. And the reason why I'm really, I study speculation, I study mania. I'm not a big gambler, but I do like to invest in things that I think are novel. So 2008, October 2008, 2009, I was scanning the internet, and one of my friends, they sent me this paper, and it was quite interesting. And the reason why it was interesting was it was just because it was prescient of what I saw with the internet. So I had missed the internet, but I was really keen on what is this digital payment system. I saw the inefficiency of banks, payments, etc. And the really interesting thing that stood out to me was that it's peer-to-peer, it's decentralized, it's digitally scarce, and it can't be tampered with. So if you think about the US dollar, the Fed can change the interest rates, it can print money, it can change the monetary supply based on its needs and wants. And what the existing financial infrastructure does is it basically creates a lot of inequality, it creates a lot of bubbles, and it basically transfers a lot of wealth from the many back to the few. So this was really, and from there, I started buying Bitcoin. I mentioned in 2012, I put 10,000 into Bitcoin. It's been the best performing asset overall. And the reason why I bought it was not to speculate on it, was because it was more like a collector. So if you hear about Taylor talking about NFTs, people are buying and trading NFTs, speculating on that. But I was just buying Bitcoin as just holding it as collecting like a baseball card. And little did I know that it would yield that much profit. Interesting thing was I almost sold it in 2017 just because of all of the mass mania. But luckily I kept on to it. And since 2017, I've really been a student of psychology, culture, digital assets, etc. I started writing for Kevin MD, especially talking about blockchain, crypto, NFTs, especially for physicians, because I'm trying to empower you and educate you on the implications of it. Sure, there are scams. There's going to be people that are unscrupulous. But it's my goal and mission in this area to do a lot of education and to do a lot of advocacy so that you can understand what it is. You don't necessarily have to invest in it, but you can understand it so that you can see where the future is going and maybe incorporate it. It doesn't have to be an investment, but it can be a partnership, collaboration. You can write about it. You can podcast about it. And so where do we go from here? So really in this space, it's all about building community. I'm not really here to monetize it. I'm really interested in utilizing how we can go from a centralized system into a digital economy. One, I've been talking a lot about it, podcasting. I recently did a podcast with Taylor that's coming out. Been doing a lot of networking. I've gone to a lot of conferences, meetups, Bitcoin, and it's very fascinating because the people at these conferences are not what you call shady. There's angel investors, there's venture capitalists, there's hedge funds. There's a lot of people interested in this space. So I recently started a metaverse meetup where we bring in physicians. And last time we talked about NFTs, crypto, getting exposure, and I'm looking to build and grow upon that. I'm really happy with this mastermind. And so what I think the future is going to be is really this area where we have decentralized finance, we have a new monetary system, a new financial system, and everything is going to happen in the metaverse. So the metaverse is like this 3-dimensional cyberspace. You can connect it through Oculus. Everything is going to be represented through NFTs, which are be tokenized on the blockchain. Stay tuned for my Kevin MD article, which you'll see in a week or so. But I'm happy to stay in touch. So this is my email address. This is my website. You can scan the QR code. I'm really building in my podcast, my YouTube, my email list. Connect with me there. And I've really enjoyed this mastermind, and I've really enjoyed giving this presentation. This is what I'm really passionate about, and I'm happy to answer any questions. It's interesting because I've gotten a lot of, so one is, I think really a lot of the partnerships. So in terms of when I say partnership, I'm not talking about like a financial partnership. I'm talking about like a place where we can help support other physicians, people who are interested. Especially, I'm really excited and passionate about the education space. So whether that's in the metaverse, like I said, there's a Kevin MD article, there's a podcast with Taylor that's coming out. George just ignited some ideas that I have as well. So it's going to be all about education and content. And a lot of it'll be free. It's more just to create engagement, community, learn about the technology, see how we can improve upon it, and really just basically getting the content out there. Yeah. What's interesting is I think especially millennials, Gen Z, they get it. So a lot of them are very quick to adopt it. They're really excited about this new technology. They can really see, like when I heard of NFTs, it took me a while, but I had to watch a lot of Gary Vee, I had to watch a lot of YouTube, I watch a lot of Mark Cuban, I had to talk to a lot of people because initially I thought it was a scam, but then when I really delved deep into it, there's a lot of implications for NFTs because, for example, Bitcoin is the first example of a digital currency, but NFTs are going to be an application of like digital collectibles. So I know a lot of artists are selling NFTs either as tickets, collectibles, communities. So the implications are really huge. But like I said, the response to my articles have actually been really good, but I've seen some posts where some people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. So you do have to understand and write about it. And I think being a physician, having a good reputation and a brand has really helped.
We're in fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have one very
I think that's the surface level. If Web 1.0, Web 2.0, that was like laptops, cell phones, that's like cyberspace. I think the metaverse is going to be this 3-dimensional place. But it's going to be a place where you just go. It's like, for example, like it could be this mastermind could all meet up in the metaverse. It could be, you could have a Facebook group and just meet up there and just call happy hour chat time. You could also have it for networking conferences. Especially what I think about like education wise is like you could, for example, if you are interested in finance, you could go to the metaverse app for finance and you could get the best instructors from Italy, Russia, all these different places, and you can download their videos, instruction. You can, for example, if you're interested in visiting the Egypt or different places, you could visit all of these and that would give you a more immersive experience. But I think that's like the surface level of where we're going to. Yeah. Yeah, it went well. I actually think Param was there, so she can speak to it. And I know Francis was there. There was 3 other physicians. It was like, it was really to experiment with the technology, to the wearables, really the interaction. I think the content was there. Like Param asked a lot of good questions. Bitcoin, Ethereum, exposure to altcoins, exposure to Decentraland, all of these different coins and how to get exposure to them, the Bitcoin ETFs, all of these. The engagement is there. I just have to build out the community and promote it more. But it was a really interesting experiment. What I'm doing for that strategy is, so I know, for example, JP Morgan, they just started the virtual bank in, I believe it was Decentraland. But what I'm doing, I don't buy the individual land. What I do is I buy the individual tokens. I have exposure to Sandbox and to Decentraland. These are the metaverse tokens. So that gives me exposure, but I don't own the land outright. Other ways you could get exposure to the metaverse is through, for example, NVIDIA does a lot of the gaming chips. So you could look into that. I would caution you to wait because there's a lot of volatility in the markets and a lot of stocks are up and down. So you can go and look at the price. You don't have to go in right away because I think with the market volatility these days, you have to be more careful.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 40% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
Yeah. 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 No, and I know, Francis, like yesterday, you spoke a lot about like liquidity pools, mining, lending, staking, all of these things. So these are all really interesting applications. For example, in my portfolio, I hold Bitcoin and you can actually, Coinbase allows you to take a loan. It's a collateralized loan. So it's basically almost like taking out a home equity loan, but it's digital and that's your own. And it's almost like you acting as your own bank and you're lending to yourself. So that's another application that is possible. Yeah.
What was your,
Yeah. So I told you I put in 10,000 and back then, I think 2012, Bitcoin was around like 100, 200. Nonetheless, it was like your return is almost, it's always been almost 1,000 plus X. I didn't, but yeah. So yeah.
this crypto?
Yeah. What's interesting is, so for example, we talk about asymmetry, right? So asymmetry is doing, for example, the way I think about it is back in 2012, you put in 1 month's worth of salary and that yielded, that could shave off years off your retirement age. If you're willing to lose a month to gain a couple years, that's worth it. But like I said, these types of asymmetries that are happening as we speak. You may not find that with Bitcoin now, but you may find it with other developing coins. So we're still very early in the space. So that's why it's very fascinating to educate yourself, do your research, and network and connect with others.
For you mentioned on the business coaching side that the move from working with individuals to working with businesses.
Yeah.
What do you,
Yeah. So for example, like I started speaking at conferences, started coaching clients, and that's great to learn the skill, but to really scale it, I think you have to do something digital or work with. So for example, you could coach business enterprises, you could be consultant to businesses, you could speak at businesses, because businesses is highly scalable because they have deeper pockets. As the brand and influence grows, that's where I'm looking towards. But yeah.
so are you work in this field exclusively with physicians?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of my clients are really physicians. And now what's happened is that the brand has grown. I'm starting to work with sponsors. So sponsors are getting sponsorships. The affiliate side is actually growing as well. So I've developed affiliates with a lot of like Param and Mike and a lot of other physician influencers. So affiliates are a really great way to scale and increase your income that way.
Can you talk a little bit about sponsorship? So do they approach you? Do you approach them? A reasonable starting point. I will bring a knowledge community like 60,000. Well, would you consider that large?
Yeah. So so couple ways. So one is direct outreach. So you have a sponsored sheet. So you can see what you can do is you can go to different conferences and see who's sponsoring those conferences. And then afterwards you can either connect with them on LinkedIn. You can meet them at the conference themselves, and it's basically a pitch. So you're pitching your brand and your platform to them, much like you pitching to a client or pitching your course or a summit, or except you're just pitching to a business entity for that sponsorship. So that's one way that's direct. So if you look at the big brands like White Coat Investor, Mike's, Peter Kim's, all of these, a lot of these sponsors actually approach them and they negotiate that. So the bigger your brand is, the more likely they are to, it's like advertising. In terms of mine, so for example, they want to see a certain number of traffic to your website, either a following. For podcasting, it's the threshold is like 200 downloads per episode. If you have more, such as Taylor's, you can do that. You can actually partner, like for example, Somi Docs. So there's a lot of different ways to monetize that. And then to your point, I think I heard yesterday you had a really great presentation talking about sponsorships and how you were approaching them. That's some of the ways that you can actually do that.
So me though, I consider.
Yeah. Oh, I love Dana. I think she's really one of the innovators. I think if you look at her social media, she's really asking really cutting edge questions. I think there's only a handful of physicians who I would call true entrepreneurs, and she's one of them. So check it out. She's built it from she's actually have a speaking, she's got a podcasting, she's got a weekly educational series. I know Taylor's part of that. She's really growing the platform and the brand and the resources to help physicians to be successful on social media. Yeah.
I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah.
I just think that the power of any platform you join, just like this mastermind, is going to be the power of one of the reasons this mastermind's awesome is Mike just did a really good job. Same thing with Donna as well, like rise and since it was a speaking, there's enough members. At the same time, she's not able to do the right recruiting to weaken the platform. So long story short, I believe in Donna hence why I joined in early. But again, it's going to rise or fall depending on people in that platform. Just like with this mastermind, right? We had to believe Mike was going to come in and get awesome people into this session for us enough to show up to this, right? And we all did believe in that, and it would have been quality. It's a little bit like sometimes with these platforms, it's like a chicken and you have to be like the first 5%. And then after that happens, then it rolled. Yeah. I believe in Donna. I believe in what she's doing, and she's
Yeah.
excited to help.
Yeah.
Chris, question for you, because you're in the financial freedom space, that's what your brand is essentially.
Yeah.
When you think about sponsors, do you think mostly from that angle, or people who are talking about insurance part, they seem to be the one who are more interested in
Yeah.
And from that, do you think in friends, the brand, where you
Yeah. Great question. When I started taking sponsors last year, and so you make a good point is you want to partner with sponsors that the product and what's good. So your reputation and your credibility, but also that you also want to make sure that it doesn't dilute your brand. So for example, if you're in the area of real estate or investing, partner up with mortgage, credit, finance, lending, all of that. Right now, I'm starting to, well, actually I should, as it grows more and more in terms of sponsorship revenue, I want to start tailoring it down to very specific brands that I know and that I can vet, and also that enhance the brand. So that's a really good question as well. But when you're first starting out, if someone wants to advertise on you, you're likely to take their money. But
I had questions about sponsorship with podcast. We feel
yeah.
That was very Christopher.